This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The head of the Palestinian Red Crescent said that 38 Palestinians were injured in clashes with occupation soldiers in the town of Essawiya in occupied Jerusalem.
Other Palestinians were injured in other areas of occupied Jerusalem. This comes after Palestinian forces called for a day of anger in reaction to Israel's construction of a synagogue in occupied Jerusalem. The following report comes from occupied Jerusalem.
The
Shafat refugee camp became the battlefield for the fiercest clashes witnessed between Palestinians and occupation soldiers in the eastern part of Jerusalem. During unmatched confrontations between heavily armed soldiers and unarmed young Palestinian men, occupation soldiers responded to stones with sound bombs and rubber bullets. Because clashes expanded to other areas, the occupation authorities deployed additional soldiers to Jerusalem, which has been under occupation since June 1967. The Palestinians went out to the streets on this day of anger without any Arab or international support. Palestinians expressed their anger in response to plans announced by the Israeli government last week to build new settlement units in Jerusalem. What made the Palestinians even angrier is the Israeli decision to reopen a synagogue in Jerusalem, which came within the framework of a plan to Judify the city and strip it of its Arab and Islamic identity. Muslims originally prayed facing Jerusalem, and the city is their third holiest site. Jerusalem has a unique status for Muslims around the world because the Holy Dome of the Rock and the Aqsa Mosque are located in that city, and it is from there that the Prophet Muhammad ascended and spoke to God. Israel is trying hard to Judify the city by constructing such buildings near the Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians believe that such moves are aimed at paving the way for building the alleged temple. This has compelled some Palestinian officials to warn that acts of violence are not only caused by Jewish extremists, but also by members of the Israeli government. Israel knows the risks of its provocative policies in Jerusalem. It even predicted the Palestinian reaction last Friday, which explains why it imposed restrictions on Palestinian worshippers trying to access the Aqsa Mosque. Israel also increased its oppressive policies and closed all of the West Bank in what it referred to as necessary security measures.
Our reporter Elias Karam joins us from Jerusalem. Elias, what are the latest developments?
Clashes in Essawiya are intense and have been ongoing since the early hours of the morning. They started at 7 a.m. These clashes are ongoing, and occupation forces are deploying additional soldiers and special forces in an attempt to oppress these demonstrations, but to no avail. Every so often, there are incursions inside the town of Essawiya. But as soon as these forces withdraw, the young men come out again and throw stones at the Israeli forces. The Israeli soldiers responded to the stones with tear gas and sound bombs. The clashes have been increasing since the morning and have not subsided.
لكن هنا حدة المواجهات تشتد متواصلة منذ ساعات الصباح لا تهدأ ويبدو أنها مرشحة.
It appears that these clashes will increase in the coming hours. As you can see, hundreds of young men are gathering at the entrances of the town in order to confront the Israeli occupation soldiers who are stationed there.
ويتصدون لقوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي المتمركزة على الأطراف. المعلومات المتوفرة لدينا حتى هذه الساعة هناك حديث.
The information we have indicates that 35 Palestinians were arrested and 38 others were injured. 12 were injured by rubber bullets, 9 were injured by tear gas bombs, in addition to other kinds of injuries.
9 والعدد مرجح أيضا إلى الارتفاع بإصابات جراء الغاز وإصابات أخرى جراء الردود. في صفوف الشرطة الإسرائيلية
8 Israeli occupation soldiers were injured. Other areas near the old city of Jerusalem, specifically in Wadi al-Joz, al-Sawaneh, and the Mount of Olives, also witnessed violent clashes with the Israeli occupation.
There was high security in the old city of Jerusalem today following calls from Palestinian leadership to defend the Temple Mount from alleged Israeli aggression. Shopkeepers observed a 2-hour commercial strike, but threats of violence failed to materialize, as we see in this report.
Tensions ran high in the capital today, ahead of the rededication of the old city's historic Hurva Synagogue, slated for later this evening. Security was on high alert amid fears of rioting, and more than 2,500 border guards and Israeli police were deployed around the gates of the old city and throughout the area.
We have received clear indications that there will be attempts in order to disturb and cause riots, and therefore it's necessary for us to implement all security measures over the next 24 hours.
Palestinian residents staged a mid-afternoon strike in protest, closing their shops and businesses between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. today. Many expressed their anger and frustration at what they called Israeli provocations.
I closed my shop because we are against the Israeli decisions and what the Israeli governments do in Jerusalem, and let the settlements to do. They are free what they're doing like they want.
Meanwhile, at today's Palestinian cabinet meeting in Ramallah, top leaders called upon Israeli Arabs to gather at the Temple Mount in protest of the synagogue's dedication and also to defend against what they said were Jewish attempts to rebuild the temple. Trying to do his part to ease tensions, President Shimon Peres today stressed the idea of tolerance, saying that what is sacred to the Muslims is sacred to us. What is sacred to the Christians is sacred to us. And of course, what is sacred to us is sacred to everyone. We aim to renew the peace process. We will not let any crisis stop it, and we will overcome the crisis. For the 4th consecutive day today, Israeli security forces restricted entry at the Temple Mount complex to Arab men over the age of 50 and female worshippers. This is Sarah Levine for IBA News.
AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, issued a statement today expressing serious concern regarding the harsh criticism leveled against Israel by the Obama administration. AIPAC called on the White House to take immediate steps to defuse the tensions with Jerusalem, resulting from the Ramat Shlomo housing controversy. The lobby group reminded Obama that Israel is America's closest ally in the Middle East and urged the U.S. president to move away from public demands and unilateral deadlines directed at Israel. The verbal attacks, however, on Israel continued over the weekend as senior Obama advisors made the rounds of American TV talk shows.
What happened there was an affront, it was an insult, but that's not the most important thing. What it did was it made more difficult a very difficult process. We've just gotten proximity, so-called proximity talks going between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and this seemed calculated to undermine that, and that was distressing to everyone who is promoting the idea of peace and security in the region. Israel is a strong and special ally. The bonds run deep, but for just that very reason, this was not the right way to behave. That was expressed by the Secretary of State as well as the vice president. I'm not going to discuss what diplomatic talks we've had underneath that, but I think the Israelis understand clearly why we were upset and what we want moving forward. But I do believe that it is absolutely imperative, not just for the security of Israel and the Palestinian people, who were, remember, at war just a year ago, but it is important for our own security that we move forward and resolve this very difficult issue.
Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman decided to boycott Brazilian President Lula da Silva's visit to Israel in protest of the latter's refusal to visit the gravesite of the founder of Zionism, Theodor Herzl. Israeli media reported that Lieberman did not attend the session held by the Knesset for the Brazilian president, nor did he attend the meeting between the president and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Brazilian President Lula da Silva is the guest of Israeli and Palestinian officials while he is on a brief visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories. For Israel, what matters is that da Silva represents a country that is not a permanent member of the UN Security Council and opposes sanctions on Iran and is even preparing to visit Tehran this coming May.
In the Knesset, the Brazilian president listened to Israel's point of view, and we were hoping that he will convey it to Tehran so Iran stops its threats. Perhaps the Brazilian president will succeed in his diplomatic pursuit to convince Iran to halt its activities against Israel and maybe even its nuclear program.
Da Silva attended an economic workshop to mark the beginning of Israel's implementation phase of its inception in the free trade group Mercosur. Da Silva commended his country's policy to refrain from producing and using nuclear weapons, hoping that it sets an example for other countries. He also called on the Palestinians and Israelis to resume peace negotiations.
I'm proud to see that there are no nuclear weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean. In my country, there's a law that prohibits their production and usage. I would love to see that in other countries as well.
In statements that appeared to be issued in response to the wave of criticism directed at Israel from Washington, following Israel's announcement of its intention to expand the Ramat Shlomo settlement in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said during his meeting with the Brazilian president that the Israeli government's policy in East Jerusalem has not changed since the city fell under Israeli control in 1967.
The establishment of these Jewish suburbs did not harm the Arabs of East Jerusalem in any shape or form and did not come at their expense. Today, Mr. President, nearly half of Jerusalem's Jewish population lives in these suburbs. None of these places are far away.
If these statements can be construed as being directed at Washington, then it is also an important message to the Brazilian president, who is known for criticizing Israelis for the settlement policy in the West Bank. Israel hardly ever misses a chance to warn about the Iranian nuclear issue, but this time it was in front of the Brazilian president. Though described as balanced, it is well known here that the Brazilian president is less friendly with Tel Aviv when it comes to the issues of the region. From Jerusalem, Shireen Lunas, BBC.
رئيس الحكومة سعد الحريري التقى في برلين المستشارة الألمانية أنجيلا ميركل.
Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Bundestag President Norbert Lammert in Berlin. Hariri confirmed that Lebanon's security is largely linked to regional developments. Merkel stated that an Israeli military attack on Lebanon was unlikely.
أجرى رئيس مجلس الوزراء سعد الحريري محادثات مع المستشار
Prime Minister Saad Hariri held talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in which they discussed regional developments, the efforts to resume the peace process, and the bilateral relations between Lebanon and Germany. Following the talks, a joint press conference was held, during which Hariri confirmed that Lebanon's security is largely linked to regional developments. He stressed that we are in dire need to breathe life into a process that so desperately needs resuscitation. Hariri stated that the most important issue is accomplishing credible progress on the Palestinian track.
Unfortunately, I see very little progress in the Middle East peace process. I hear announcements for additional settlement construction in the West Bank, and whenever there is a little flicker of light in the midst of this darkness, I am tremendously concerned by this issue. At the same time, I won't lose faith in the power of cooperation and diplomacy to find common grounds and a common stance for peace in the Middle East.
Merkel, from her side, downplayed the possibility of an Israeli war on Lebanon. She stated that the construction of new settlements should end.
I think that the current developments are headed toward stabilization, and I don't see any danger for a war, whether it's from Israel against Lebanon. But the issue hasn't been stabilized enough in order to enjoy that kind of stability or calm. So indirect talks between Israel and the Palestinians must continue. We see through the announcement of the construction of additional settlements in the West Bank, we see that we have suffered a serious blow to the question of proximity talks between the Palestinians and Israel. In a phone call with Mr. Netanyahu, I clarified that point and said that it is dangerous to disrupt the entire Middle East peace process.
Upon his return to his residence, the Prime Minister received German Foreign Minister Guido Westerwelle. During their meeting, the two officials held further talks about the issues discussed with the German Chancellor. He also met the German Defense Minister and visited the head of parliament.
انتهت معركة الدعاية الانتخابية في العراق قبل 24 ساعة من موعد.
The election campaigns in Iraq ended 24 hours before the election day on March 7th, but some candidates still have not paid the designers and print shops for their election posters.
ومصممي اللافتات والصور. الحديث في تقرير.
We leave you with Ali Khalaf.
After the results of the parliamentary elections became clear, and after many candidates realized that they had lost, the owners of print shops and visual ad companies started demanding candidates to pay their bills. Candidates whose posters filled the streets of Basra have still not paid the cost associated with these ads, estimated to be in the millions of Iraqi dinars.
Different candidates owe me more than $60,000. One candidate owes me $10,000 and another owes me $20,000.
Some candidates promise to pay, but they never show up. Others don't pick up our phone calls, and some even disconnected their phones.
Some candidates sold their furniture and cars to pay their debts, such as candidate Adel Abdel Razak, but others only offered a lot of excuses. Graphic designer Ahmad decided to post the most famous excuses in a large font outside his office, or as Iraqis call them, klarat.
We go to their private offices, but we never find them. They tell us that the candidate is outside Iraq or that they went to Baghdad. I decided to make a list of their most famous excuses and post it outside my office. I called it the list of excuses, or klarat.
He's been asking me for money since the election campaign, so I sold my car and gave him the money just to get rid of him.
To better compete in these elections and by using Photoshop, candidates were made to look 10 years younger on their election posters. Basra residents know that these candidates have still not paid the costs associated with producing these posters. In fact, if their creditors decide to sue them, they may have to go to court for failing to pay their debts. From Basra, Ali Khalaf, Al Arabiya.
The Kuwaiti National Assembly is having another confidence crisis. A heated discussion began today over a number of allegations directed last month at Information and Oil Minister Sheikh Ahmed Al-Abdullah Sabah. As-Sabah is accused of not applying the financial control provisions on organizations and companies licensed to publish and broadcast, and of not applying visual media-related laws. This is the fifth inquiry on Sheikh Ahmed Abdullah Sabah in the current parliament, and the sixth in the 13th legislative term of the National Assembly. Joining us from Kuwait over the phone is our correspondent, Ahmed Al-Unaizi. Ahmed, for the fifth time, the Minister of Information stands in front of the inquiry podium. What is the general atmosphere like inside the session?
Yes, actually, this is the second time that he stands before the inquiry podium, but 5 ministers of information have had to face it in the past. The inquiry podium has witnessed many information ministers. Today's inquiry was described as routine and very casual. The major parts of the inquiry did not produce anything new. The public and political observers expected some surprises and stronger charges against Minister Ahmed Al-Sabah, different than the ones mentioned by the head of the inquiry committee, Ali Digbasi. Many people also expected a verbal oath to take place in the beginning of the session, the way they usually start, but the inquiry began very casually. The inquiry is still going on, and it is expected that someone will speak in support of the minister and someone will speak in support of the session's head of the committee. More explanations will eventually follow.
So has the possibility of ousting or ending the term of the Minister of Information from the National Assembly been excluded?
It's difficult to guess right now, because at the end of this session, after all, the members have listened to the complete questioning and to the answers given. 10 representatives may submit a request for the minister's resignation. The head of the National Assembly, Jassim Al-Karafi, will appoint a special session on a specific date, maybe in a week or two, to vote on the resignation proposal. But political observers say that they did not see or hear all of the articles of the inquiry during this session, and even if voting on the proposal of Sheikh Ahmed Abdullah's resignation takes place, voting abstention may be the dominant position in that case.
Our correspondent Ahmed Al-Unaizi from Kuwait, thank you.
France welcomed the release of 2 French hostages and praised the efforts of the Sudanese government and the responsible authorities in the case. French ambassador in Khartoum, Patrick Nicoloso, said that his country expressed its gratitude to all the sides that took part in the release efforts. Nicoloso said the 2 hostages were kidnapped on November 22, 2009, while working in Dirawa in Central Africa and were later transferred to Darfur. The official spokesman for the Sudanese Foreign Ministry, Muawiyah Uthman, praised the Sudanese military, police and security forces for their efforts that led to the release of the 2 French hostages.
The release of the 2 hostages was made possible by the well-coordinated efforts of the Sudanese authorities. We must recognize the efforts of the security agencies, which include the military and the Foreign and Interior Ministry forces. Their efforts have led to the safe release of the 2 hostages. We are very happy. The French authorities held constant consultations with the Sudanese authorities, which led to the release of the hostages.
With the participation of several Arab ministers of environment, the Arab League held a meeting at its headquarters in Cairo. The ministers discussed the environmental changes expected in the Arab world amidst climate change, pollution, and desertification.
The Council discussed ways to resolve environmental problems in Sudan, especially in conflict zones where tensions run high due to drought and disputes over access to grazing land.
In consultation with the Arab League and the United Nations and with the participation of several Arab ministers of environment, a report on the expected environmental changes in the Arab territory was released today in Cairo. The report is the first comprehensive scientific document to be issued in the Arab territory. The Sudanese delegation to the conference said that addressing the environmental challenges facing Sudan is its strategic option.
The main problems facing Sudan today are linked, by and large, to the environment. For example, the issue of Darfur is deeply rooted in the environment. The issue was manipulated by certain groups for political reasons. We need to launch environmental projects across Sudan in order to help prevent hostilities between cattle herders and farmers. This will also help protect the environment from drought and desertification.
The report touched on several issues pertaining to the environmental challenges facing the Arab world. Among the issues discussed are the scarcity of water resources, pollution, climate change, and desertification. In addition, the Council discussed national policies pertaining to the environment, which include the effects that depleting natural resources have on food safety, both at the national and regional levels.
We must address the issue of climate change. Although it's not a major producer of greenhouse emissions, the Arab region will negatively suffer from serious climate change because of its geographic expansion.
The report concluded that the deteriorating environmental conditions pose a serious threat with great cost, both at the health and economic levels. The report stressed the importance of gradually moving to a green economy in order to counter climate change, protect biological diversity, as well as increase economic development opportunities. The investments in environmental projects, as well as the adequate use of energy and resources, were some of the primary issues discussed in this meeting. The Council released the first report on the environmental changes expected in the Arab region. The report stressed the importance of exerting joint Arab efforts aimed at taking the necessary measures to protect the environment through the adequate use of energy and natural resources. In turn, we will be able to achieve sustainable development in the Arab world. From the headquarters of the Arab League, Samia Kasef, Sudan TV, Cairo.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.